The great chamber of Axis Prime Station could hold 10,000 beings from across the galaxy. Today it held only 3,000, but they represented the most powerful civilizations in known space. The conclave of aligned species met once every 100 years to welcome new members and settle disputes. It was the closest thing the galaxy had to a government. Ambassadors sat in the small section reserved for humanity. Earth had joined the conclave only 40 years ago. They were still considered newcomers, barely worth noticing. Their section held just 12 seats, while the elder races occupied hundreds. Was 53 years old with gray streaks in her dark hair. She had served humanity in various diplomatic roles for 20 years. She had learned to keep her face calm even when her heart was racing. Today she would need that skill more than ever. The current session focused on a new applicant. The Dominion had requested membership in the conclave. Their ambassador, a tall creature with blue-green scales and 4 arms, stood at the central platform speaking about his people's accomplishments. "We have brought order to 12 systems," the ambassador declared. His name was and he spoke with obvious pride. "Primitive species that once wasted resources on internal conflicts now serve the greater purpose of the Dominion. We are builders of empires. We would bring that strength to the conclave." The elder races listened with approval. The conclave valued stability and order. Species that could control large territories were considered mature and responsible. Listen too. But her thoughts were elsewhere. 3 months ago, a human colony ship called the Morning Star had been traveling through unclaimed space. It carried 3,000 colonists to a new world, families, children, dreams of a fresh start. They had intercepted the ship. They claimed it had strayed too close to their territory. They did not attempt communication. They did not offer warning. They simply opened fire. The Morning Star had no weapons. It was a civilian vessel carrying farmers and teachers and engineers. It died in silence, torn apart by weapons. 3,000 people became dust in memory. Among the dead was Snee and her 2 young children. The ambassador finished his speech and received polite applause. The session moderator, an ancient being from the collective, asked if any species wished to speak. Stood. The chamber grew quiet. Humans rarely spoke at conclave sessions. They were considered emotional and primitive, interesting as curiosities, but not important enough to influence galactic affairs. A few representatives from elder races smiled with amusement, wondering what the young species might say. Walked to the speaking platform. Her footsteps echoed in the vast space. She carried a small folder in her hands. 3 months ago, she began, her voice steady. A human colony ship was destroyed by military forces. 3,000 of our people died. Men, women, children. She paused and looked directly at the ambassador. Showed no reaction. "We have requested explanation and received none. We have demanded justice and been ignored. The Dominion has not acknowledged the attack. They have not returned the remains of our dead. They have not spoken a single word to us since the Morning Star fell silent. Finally spoke. The vessel entered restricted space. It was dealt with according to our laws. We owe no explanation to minor species." Some representatives from elder races nodded. Territorial rights were sacred. In the conclave, if a ship crossed into claimed space, the controlling species had authority to respond as they saw. Vid opened her folder and removed a photograph. She held it up for the chamber to see. It showed a young girl, perhaps 6 years old, with dark hair and a gap to smile. This is Maria Santos. She was traveling to the new colony with her parents. She wanted to see real trees, earthborn trees, not the ones grown in station gardens. Her parents promised she could plant her own apple tree. When they arrived, she set the photograph down and removed another boy, slightly older, with serious eyes. This is James. He was going to be a farmer like his grandfather. He had already picked out names for the animals he would raise. One by one placed photographs on the platform. Children's faces looked up at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. I have 3,000 photographs, said quietly. I could stand here for days, showing you each one, but I will not. You have already decided these lives do not matter. You have already decided that humans are too weak, too primitive, too unimportant to deserve justice. She gathered the photographs and returned them to her folder. So I am not here to ask for justice. The conclave will not provide it. The elder races will not demand it. They will not offer it. She turned to face directly. I am here to deliver a warning, a formal warning recorded in official conclave archives so that no one can later claim ignorance. The chamber had grown very quiet. Surrender. The officers who ordered this attack. Provide full compensation to the families of the dead. Acknowledge your crime and accept responsibility. Made a sound that might have been laughter or what little human. You have no fleet. You have no empire. You have barely learned to travel between stars. What could you possibly do to the Dominion? Did not raise her voice. She spoke as calmly as if discussing the weather. If you do not meet these terms, humanity will hunt you, not your species, not your civilization. You, the individuals responsible for this attack. We will find them. We will follow them. We will never stop. Now the laughter spread through the chamber. Representatives from dozens of species found amusement in the tiny human making threats against a star-spanning empire. You will hunt us? Asked, his forearms spread wide in mockery. For how long? A year, 10 years. Until you grow bored or poor or tired. Met his eyes forever. The laughter grew louder. Some representatives wiped tears of amusement from their various visual organs. A human threatening forever. A species that lived barely a century. Promising eternal vengeance. It was the funniest thing many of them had heard in decades. Waited until the laughter faded. Then she spoke once more. I have delivered humanity's warning. It is now part of official record. The Dominion has been formally of the consequences of their actions. What happens next is their choice. She walked back to the human section and sat down. The session continued. The Dominion was welcomed into the conclave with full membership rights. Received congratulations from representatives of a 100 species. No one spoke to. 6 months later, the attack on the Morning Star was forgotten by everyone who mattered in galactic politics. They expanded their territory. The elder races pursued their ancient agendas. Humanity remained in its small corner of the galaxy, dismissed and ignored. But in quiet rooms on Earth and its colonies, people gathered. They shared photographs and names. They studied language and culture. They learned patience. The galaxy had laughed at the warning. They would not laugh Forever, Commander enjoyed his retirement. He had served the Dominion for 40 years, rising through the ranks, until he commanded his own warship. He had enforced Dominion law across 3 systems. He had brought order to chaos and strength to weakness. Now he rested on a resort world famous for its warm seas and excellent service. 3 years had passed since he destroyed the human vessel. He rarely thought about it. The ship had been in restricted space. He had followed protocol. The fact that it carried civilians meant nothing. Weak species that could not protect their own people deserved whatever happened to them. Spent his days swimming in the purple waters and his evenings enjoying fun meals. He had earned this peace. He had served well. The resort catered to wealthy from across the Dominion. Security was excellent. No weapons were permitted on the grounds. Guests were screened thoroughly before arrival. Felt completely safe. He was reading reports from home when someone knocked on his door. He checked the security display and saw a service worker, a small, four-armed figure carrying fresh linens. Nothing unusual. He opened the door. The service worker moved faster than thought possible. Before he could react, something pressed against his neck. Cold spread through his body. His legs stopped working. He collapsed. The service worker caught him before he hit the floor, gently, almost carefully. The figure lowered him onto his bed. Could not move. He could not speak, but he could see and hear everything. The service worker removed a mask, revealing a human face, a woman, perhaps 30 years old, with calm dark eyes. She pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down. "Commander," she said quietly, "my name is Sarah. 3 years ago, you destroyed a ship called the Morning Star. Do you remember?" Tried to speak, but his mouth would not obey. He could only stare. "My sister was on that ship. Her name was Maria. She was 28 years old. She had just finished her medical training. She was going to the colony to start a clinic." The woman reached into her pocket and removed a photograph. She held it where could see. A young woman with the same dark eyes smiled at the camera. "Maria always wanted to help people. Even when we were children, she would bandage injured animals and comfort crying friends. She never hurt anyone in her entire life." Sarah set the photograph on his chest, directly over his heart. "You killed her. You killed 3,000 people like her. People who had done nothing wrong. People who were simply trying to build new lives." She leaned closer. The conclave laughed at our warning. "Your government ignored our demands. Your people celebrated what you did, but we meant every word, Commander. We will never stop. We will never forget, and we will never forgive." She stood and walked to the door. "Poison will stop your heart in about 10 minutes. It will look like natural causes. By the time anyone thinks to investigate, I will be 3 systems away. And Commander, I want you to know something as you die." She looked back at him. "There were 200 crew members on your ship that day. Every single one of them will receive a visit like this. It might take years, it might take decades, but we have already memorized their names. We have already found their families. We have already begun." She left, died, alone, staring at the ceiling. Photograph of a stranger resting on his chest. The authorities investigated his death briefly. Natural heart failure. They concluded he was old. It happened. His family mourned and moved on. 7 months later, another retired officer died in his sleep on a different world. 8 months after that, a ship's Engineer fell from a balcony during a festival. Then a weapons technician was killed in what appeared to be a robbery. Then a communications officer drowned. While swimming alone, each death seemed unconnected, different worlds, different methods, different circumstances. The only common thread was that each victim had served on ship 3 years ago. By the 5th year after the Morning Star attack, 12 crew members were dead. Intelligence finally noticed the pattern. They assigned investigators to examine each case. The investigators found almost nothing. A witness here who remembered a stranger asking questions. A security recording there that showed an unfamiliar face in a crowd. But no proof, no evidence that could be presented to the conclave, no trail that led back to Earth. What they did find at each death scene disturbed them deeply. A small token left behind, sometimes a photograph of a human child, sometimes a toy, sometimes just a piece of paper with a name written on it. The names belonged to Morning Star passengers. Intelligence presented their findings to the Dominion Council. The humans were hunting them, killing them one by one. It was assassination on a scale the galaxy had never seen. The Council was alarmed but not panicked. They increased security for surviving crew members. They filed a formal complaint with the conclave. They demanded that Earth be held responsible. Earth Everything, their ambassador, expressed confusion and concern. Surely, they were not suggesting that humanity had the capability to conduct assassinations across multiple star systems. Humanity barely had a fleet. They were still learning to navigate galactic politics. The very idea was absurd. The conclave agreed. Evidence was circumstantial. The deaths could be coincidences. The elder races had more important matters to consider. But the deaths continued. Year 6 brought 4 more kills. Year 7 brought 5. The hunters were patient. They waited months between operations. They never struck the same world twice in the same year. They used different methods each time, from poison to accidents to violence that looked like crime. The surviving crew members began to panic. They requested transfers to secure military bases. They changed their names. They moved their families to hidden locations. Some hired private security teams. Some never went outside without armed escorts. It did not matter. A crew member surrounded by bodyguards died when his food was poisoned before it ever reached the restaurant. Another died when his transport vehicle malfunctioned over a deep canyon. Another simply vanished, disappearing from a locked room with no trace except a small photograph left on his pillow. By the 10th year, the Dominion had changed. Officers refused assignments that might draw human attention. Politicians avoided mentioning Earth in public speeches. Celebration that had once followed the Morning Star attack was now treated as a shameful memory, something to be forgotten. But the hunters did not forget. They had promised forever, and forever, as they were learning, was a very long time. Was young for a scholar. Barely 40 years old when she began her research. She had grown up hearing whispers about the deaths, about the human hunters who killed without warning or mercy. Most dismissed the stories as exaggeration or enemy propaganda. Wanted to understand the truth, she started by studying the deaths themselves. 15 years after the Morning Star attack, 47 connected to the incident had died. Not just crew members, but officers who had approved the mission, politicians who had celebrated it, even journalists who had mocked the human warning. The pattern was undeniable. Each death was different in method, but identical, meaning each victim received a token before dying. Each investigation led nowhere. The hunters moved like ghosts through the galaxy, killing and vanishing without trace. Requested access to classified intelligence files. She read reports from investigators who had spent years chasing shadows. She studied witness descriptions of strangers who appeared and disappeared. She examined the tokens left behind, photographs and toys and names written in human script, but it was not until she began studying human history that she truly understood what her species faced. Earth's past was readily available in galactic archives. Humans had shared their history openly. When they joined the conclave, most species ignored it. Why would anyone care about the primitive conflicts of a minor world? Cared. She read everything. She learned about something called the Holocaust, a massive killing that humans had inflicted on themselves centuries ago. Millions died. When the war ended, the survivors did not forget. They created organizations dedicated to hunting the killers. They called them Nazi hunters. These hunters pursued their targets for decades. Read about men who spent their entire lives tracking a single killer. She read about trials held 50 years after the crimes. She read about old men dragged from hiding to face justice for things they had done as young soldiers. 50 years, the hunters had never stopped. She found other examples, blood feuds between human family groups that lasted for generations, vendettas passed from parent to child like sacred duties, conflicts that began over single deaths and consumed entire communities for centuries. Read about a human criminal who killed one person and fled across their world. Law enforcement searched for him, gave up, moved on to other cases, but the victim's father did not give up. He spent the rest of his life tracking the killer. When the father died, his son continued the hunt. The killer was finally found 30 years later, living under a false name on the other side of the planet. One death, 30 years. 2 generations of hunters closed her research files and sat in silence for a long time. They had killed 3,000 humans, children among them, and they had laughed when humanity promised forever. She requested an audience with the Dominion Council. The council chamber was impressive, a vast space decorated with symbols of conquest. 20 senior leaders sat in judgment, their scales gleaming under ceremonial lights. They looked down at with expressions ranging from boredom to mild curiosity. You wish to present research, the high said a speaker, activated her display and began showing the evidence she had gathered. Death after death, token after token, pattern after pattern. The council watched with growing discomfort. 47 dead in 15 years, concluded, but this is only the beginning. The humans are not trying to defeat us quickly. They are not even trying to frighten us into surrender. They are doing something far worse. What could be worse? I asked. They are making us into a lesson. Changed her display to show human history. She explained about the Nazi hunters. She explained about the blood feuds. She explained about the fathers who passed vengeance to their sons. Humans do not think like us, she said. When we calculate revenge, we consider cost and benefit. We ask whether the Effort is worth the result. If the cost is too high, we abandon the pursuit. It is logical, it is efficient. She paused. Humans do not calculate. They simply continue. The hunt is not a strategy for them, it is a need. Something deep in their nature demands that wrongs be answered. They cannot stop even if they wanted to, and they do not want to. The high made a dismissive gesture. They are a minor species. They have no fleet, no empire. How can they sustain such operations indefinitely? They do not need a fleet, replied. They only need individuals. One human can spend an entire lifetime hunting one target. When that human dies, another takes their place. The hunt becomes sacred, it becomes tradition. Parents teach their children the names of the guilty. Communities gather to share information and resources. She showed them the population figures. For humanity snorts billions of individuals across a dozen worlds, millions with connections to the morning star, victims, thousands willing to dedicate their lives to vengeance. We killed 3,000 of them, said quietly. That created 3,000 debts that must be paid. Every parent, every sibling, every friend of the dead is a potential hunter. They do not wear uniforms. They do not announce themselves. They simply wait and watch and strike when opportunity comes. We have already increased security, another said. We can protect our people. For how long? Asked. A year, 10 years, 100. The humans have promised forever. They mean it. Their history proves they mean it, and they have patience we cannot match. She closed her display. I recommend immediate negotiation. Give them what they asked for. Surrender the officers. Pay the compensation. Acknowledge the crime. End this before it destroys us. The council debated for hours. In the end, they rejected her recommendation. Negotiation would show weakness. The Dominion did not bend to threats from minor species. Security would be increased. Patrols would be expanded. The hunters would be found and eliminated. Left the chamber knowing her words had been wasted. 20 years later she would think of this day often. By then 130 would be dead. The Dominion would be paralyzed by fear. Officers would refuse promotions. Politicians would avoid mentioning Earth. Children would grow up hearing stories about the human ghosts who came in the night, and still the hunters would not stop because humans had promised forever, and unlike the humans kept their promises. Premier stood at the window of her office looking out at the capital city of the she was 60 years old, born 5 years before the Morning Star attack. She had grown up in its shadow. Her earliest memories included whispered conversations between adults, strange names spoken with fear, stories about humans who moved like shadows and killed without warning. As a child she had nightmares about faceless figures coming for her family. Now she led the Dominion, and the nightmares had not stopped. 30 years had passed since the attack. Of the 200 crew members who served on the destroyer that day, 180 were dead. The hunters had been thorough, patient, relentless. The 20 survivors lived like prisoners. They stayed in heavily fortified compounds, never seeing natural light, never breathing unfiltered air. Armed guards watched them constantly. Food was tested multiple times before serving. Every visitor was searched and scanned and questioned. Even so, 3 had died in the past year alone, 1 from poison that somehow entered the water supply despite daily testing, one from a guard who had been bribed or replaced or simply convinced, one from a medical device that malfunctioned at exactly the wrong moment. The hunters always found a way. But it was not just the deaths that haunted, it was what the hunt had done to her civilization. The Dominion had not expanded in 20 years. Military officers refused commands that might attract human attention. Politicians built their careers on avoiding conflict with Earth. Merchants avoided human space entirely. Even scientists studying galactic cultures skipped over humanity in their research, afraid to draw notice. Fear had become the foundation of society. An entire generation had grown up knowing that somewhere in the darkness hunters waited. Every stranger could be an assassin. Every accident could be murder. Every peaceful death might not be peaceful at all. Had watched her predecessor die slowly from the stress. He never slept more than 2 hours at a time. He never ate food that had not been tested by multiple tasters. He never met visitors without armed guards surrounding him. In the end, his heart simply gave out. The doctors said it was natural causes, knew better. The humans had killed him without touching him, simply by making him afraid every moment of every day. She would not let that happen to her. She would not let it continue happening to her people. She summoned her advisors and told them her plan. She would travel to Earth personally. She would meet with the human government. She would end this. Her advisors begged her to reconsider. The risk was too great. The humans could not be trusted. She would be walking into the heart of enemy territory. Listened to their objections and ignored them. She took a small ship with minimal crew and traveled to the human Earth. Surprised her. She had expected a fortress world bristling with weapons and defenses. Instead, she found a planet covered with blue oceans and green forests. Cities spread across the continents, but they left room for wilderness. Children played in parks. People walked freely without armed escorts. The humans did not live in fear. They had sent hunters across the galaxy to kill for 30 years, and they lived as if nothing had happened. Met with the human president in a simple office overlooking one of their cities. He was an old man with white hair and kind eyes. His name was Alexander Santos. His granddaughter had been on the Morning Star. Thank you for meeting with me, said she had rehearsed this conversation many times. It took courage to come here. Santos replied, your predecessors preferred to hide. Accepted the observation without comment. I have come to offer terms, full admission of our crime, compensation beyond what was originally demanded, memorials on worlds, honoring the dead, criminal trials for any surviving crew members who participated in the attack. She paused. In exchange, we ask only that the hunting stop. Santos was quiet for a long moment. He looked out the window at the city below. Premier, I appreciate your offer. It is more than any previous leader has been willing to consider, but I cannot accept it. Cannot or will not. Both. He turned to face her. Let me explain something that your intelligence reports may not have captured. The hunters are not soldiers. They do not follow my orders. They are not even organized in any meaningful way. Then, who are they? Family members, friends, neighbors of the dead, ordinary people who decided that what happened to the Morning Star could not go unanswered. Santos walked to his desk and picked up a photograph. He showed it to a young Girl smiled at the camera. This is my granddaughter. She was 6 years old. She wanted to plant apple trees on the new colony. She drew pictures of what her orchard would look like. He set the photograph down. When she died, I wanted to hunt down every who participated. I wanted to tear your civilization apart with my bare hands. But I was old even then. I knew I would never live to see justice completed. So you send others. No, I did not send anyone. I simply could not stop them. Thousands of people who lost loved ones made the same choice. I wanted to make. They trained themselves. They learned your language and customs. They found ways to travel through the galaxy without being noticed, and they began hunting. Struggled to understand. Your government does not control them. My government could not stop them even if we wanted to, and we do not want to. Santos met her eyes directly. What you did to the Morning Star was evil, cold, deliberate. Evil. You killed children because they crossed an invisible line in empty space, and when we asked for justice, your people laughed. That was 30 years ago. Most alive today had nothing to do with it. And most humans alive today lost no one on the Morning Star, but they know the story. They teach it to their children. The hunt has become part of who we are. It reminds us that some things cannot be forgotten. Some debts must be paid, no matter how long it takes. Felt the weight of centuries pressing down on her. What would it take to end this? Santos shook his head slowly. I do not think it can end. The hunters have dedicated their lives to this mission. Some have died and passed the duty to their children. The hunt has become tradition, ritual, almost religion. Even if I commanded them to stop, even if every government on Earth issued orders, the hunters would continue. He walked closer to her. But I will tell you something else. The hunt is not really about revenge anymore. It is about sending a message. Your species is being made into a lesson that the galaxy will remember for 10,000 years. Every civilization will know what happens when you harm human children. Every species will think twice before attacking our people. You are using us as an example. We are teaching the universe to fear us, Santos said quietly. Not our fleets or our weapons or our armies. Those things can be counted and compared and overcome. No one can overcome forever. No one can defeat patience. No one can fight an enemy that simply never stops. Left Earth that day, understanding what her species truly faced. Not an enemy, but a force of nature. Not a war, but an eternal truth. Some species forgave. Some species forgot. Humans did neither. The old died quietly in his sleep. His name was, and he had been the youngest crew member on the destroyer that killed the Morning Star. He was barely 20 then, a junior technician who had no part in the decision to open fire. He had simply been there for 50 years. He had been hunted. He changed his name 7 times. He moved to 12 different worlds. He lived in hidden compounds, underground shelters, even aboard ships that never stopped moving. He married twice, but both times he left his wives rather than put them at risk. He had children, but never met them, afraid that his presence would draw the hunters to his family. In the end, he grew tired of running. He was 70 years old and exhausted to his bones. He found a small apartment on a quiet world and waited for death to find him. He was done hiding. A woman watched him from across the street as he took his final breaths. Her name was Maria, and she was 63 years old. Her grandmother had been on the Morning Star. She had trained her entire life. For this moment, she had tracked for 15 years. She learned his patterns, memorized his routines, waited for the perfect opportunity. She had been ready to kill him for a decade, but nature moved faster. The old simply stopped breathing. One night his heart finally giving out after 50 years of constant fear. Maria felt nothing, no satisfaction, no triumph, only a strain, emptiness. She crossed the street and entered his building. The security systems were weak, appropriate for a man who had stopped caring whether he lived or died. She found his body in the small bedroom, lying peacefully on a simple bed. She placed a flower on his chest. White rose grown from seeds her grandmother had saved from earth. Then she left. The hunt was complete. Every crew member from that destroyer was now dead. The debt had been paid in full. Maria returned to Earth and reported to the Council of Names. This was an informal gathering of hunters who tracked targets and coordinated efforts. They had no official status, no government recognition. They simply met in quiet rooms and shared information. The council acknowledged that the Morning Star hunt was finished. 50 years, 200 targets, complete success. The oldest and most determined hunt in human history had finally ended, but the lesson was just beginning. 3 months later, the conclave of aligned species held its regular session. A new applicant requested membership. They called themselves the Hegemony, and their ambassador spoke with great pride about their military conquests in expanding territory. We have brought 6 systems under our control, the ambassador declared. We do not tolerate weakness. We do not accept disorder. Those who oppose us are crushed. The elder races listened with their usual detached interest. Military strength was respected in the conclave. They seemed like worthy additions. Then the ambassador mentioned almost casually that they had recently destroyed a human mining outpost that had strayed too close to their borders. 63 workers had died. The chamber fell silent. Old rose slowly from the section. She was over 90 now. Her scales faded and her movements careful, but her voice remained strong. May I address the assembly? The moderator granted permission. Walked to the central platform, her ancient bones aching with each step. 45 years ago I stood before the Dominion Council and warned them about humanity. I told them that humans do not forget. I told them that humans do not forgive. I told them that when a human says forever, they mean forever. She looked at the ambassador. The council did not listen. They thought humans were weak, primitive, unimportant. She activated a display. Images appeared, showing the long list of dead over 5 decades. Names scrolled endlessly across the screen. 200 participated in killing 3,000 humans. Every single one of them died before their time, some quickly, some slowly, some after years of hiding and running and living in constant terror. She showed images of the empty militarities, politicians who refused to mention Earth, children raised to fear shadows. The hunt lasted 50 years. It ended only because every target was dead, not because humans grew tired, not because they decided revenge was inefficient, not because they found better things to do. They simply completed the task they had set for themselves. She turned to face the directly. You have killed 63 humans. I understand that. Seems like a small number to you. It seemed small to us when we killed 3,000. Numbers do not matter to humans. 1 death or 1 million. The response is the same. The ambassador made a contemptuous sound. We are not the we do not fear primitives. Neither did we, replied quietly. Neither did we. A human ambassador rose from the small section assigned to Earth. She was young, perhaps 35 years old, with dark hair and calm eyes. She wore a small pin on her collar that older conclave members recognized. It had belonged to the ambassador who delivered the original warning 50 years ago. This was her granddaughter. The young woman walked to the speaking platform. She carried a small folder. 3 weeks ago, the hegemony destroyed a human mining station. 63 of our people died. Workers, engineers, scientists studying asteroid composition. She opened the folder. I have 63 photographs. I will not show them all. You have already decided they do not matter. She looked directly at the ambassador. I am here to deliver a formal warning. Surrender the officers who ordered this attack. Provide compensation to the families of the dead. Acknowledge your crime. The laugh. Several elder races shifted uncomfortably, but the ambassador spread his limbs in amusement. Or what little human? The same threat your grandmother made. You will hunt us forever. The human ambassador did not smile. She did not raise her voice. She spoke as calmly as if reading a weather report. Yes, forever. This time the laughter was nervous. Scattered, most of the chamber remained silent. They had watched over the past 50 years. They had seen what forever actually meant. The human continued. Somewhere on your right now, someone is learning your language. Somewhere in your territory, a human merchant is mapping your security system. Somewhere in this station, my colleagues are photographing every member of your delegation, memorizing faces and names. She closed her folder. You will not know when we are coming. You will not see us until it is too late. You will live your entire lives waiting for a knock on the door that may not come for 30 years, and then one day it will come, and you will remember this moment. You will remember that we warned you. The ambassador looked around the chamber seeking support. The elder races avoided gaze. Even the representative old looked at him with something like pity. This is absurd. Said the conclave will not allow such barbarism. The moderator spoke carefully. The conclave has no authority over member species' internal justice practices. Humanity has committed no crime under conclave law. Their activities appear to violate no treaties. The ambassador stared at the assembled representatives, slowly understanding dawned. The conclave would not help him. The elder races would not intervene. He was alone against a species that had just demonstrated over half a century that their threats were not empty. This is not civilized, he said finally. Hunting people for generations is not something rational beings do. Laughed. It was a tired sound full of hard-earned wisdom. Civilized, rational young fool. Humans are neither. They are something far more dangerous. She looked at him with ancient eyes. They are patient. The session ended. The hegemony, their application for membership, they returned to their territory and quietly began negotiating with human diplomats. Within a year, they had met every demand. The galaxy learned. Word spread from system to system, species to species. A new Proverb entered galactic common language. Do not harm human children, they will hunt you forever, and forever as the galaxy now understood was not a figure of speech, it was a promise.